Have you ever felt suffocated inside your own home, or worse, inside your own head? You look around and it feels like everything is screaming. Too many things, too many thoughts, too many demands. You try to organize, but you just push the chaos from one corner to another. The truth is, there's something there that you're not seeing clearly. And maybe that's what's stopping you from breathing calmly, from sleeping soundly, from waking up with a clear purpose. It's not about what's missing, it's about what's left over. Now, answer me this. How long are you going to keep around you and inside you what only takes up space? This question might even bother you, but there's a reason for it. Because deep down, you've already realized that there's a lot that no longer serves you. But we keep putting it off, pretend we don't see it. Make excuses, say we're going to use it, say it's useful, but we don't use it. It's not. It just weighs us down. That's where Japanese minimalism comes in. And no, it's not just about having few things. It's not about having an all-white environment with straight furniture and corner plants. That's aesthetic. What you need to understand goes beyond that. It's a more internal, more silent process, and more difficult too, because it's not easy to let go, especially of what you've gotten used to, even if it's bad for. But that's it. The essential doesn't weigh you down. The essential fits. The essential welcomes. The rest sucks you dry. You're surrounded by excess, things you keep, commitments you accept, feelings you feed, and you don't realize how much it's holding you back. It's not about throwing everything away. It's not about turning your back on your history. It's about starting to make more honest choices. About looking at your things and asking yourself, does this really have to do with me? Does this bring me peace? Does this help me be who I want to be? If the answer is no, why is it still there? There's a freedom in opening up space, but you only discover that when you start to detach, to say no, to realize that you don't need to accumulate anything to feel whole. What Japanese culture teaches, and what their minimalism brings with great force, is that emptiness is not absence, it's presence, it's intention, it's clarity. When you remove the excess, what's left is what really matters, and that's when life starts to breathe. There's a concept called ma, which you may have felt without knowing the name. It's that silence between two words, the pause between one breath and another, that empty space on the wall that brings balance to the environment. Ma is where things breathe. It's where you find yourself, and if you don't leave space, you don't hear yourself anymore. You just react. You just run, you just accumulate. And you know that other term, wabi-sabi. It's accepting imperfection as part of beauty. It's understanding that there's no ideal scenario. There's the real, the now. That which makes sense, even with its flaws, because life won't always be organized, beautiful, photogenic, and that's okay. The problem is when you live trying to reach an ideal that only takes you away from what's essential. And that's where many people's mistake lies, thinking that being a minimalist is living with restriction. It's not. It's living with intention. It's choosing. It's aligning everything you have, everything you do, everything you feel with what really matters. But that requires courage, because you'll need to detach. You'll have to face a lot of things you'd rather avoid. But it's only by going through this discomfort that you begin to experience a lightness that can't be explained. Have you ever thought about how much your productivity is being affected by excess? How much your energy is being drained by things that shouldn't even be in your life anymore? Have you realized how many unnecessary decisions you make because of the mess? Not just the physical one, but the mental one. It's tiring. It weighs you down, and you don't even realize it, because it's become normal. But what if you started today? One corner of the house, one shelf, one agenda, one thought, just one. What if you chose, just for today, to keep only what brings you peace? It doesn't have to be all at once. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true. Can you imagine what it would be like to wake up in a space that welcomes you, that inspires you, that doesn't demand anything from you other than being who you are? Can you imagine the relief of not having to carry what should have already gone away? That's what we're talking about relief, about freedom, about having space to breathe and to live with more presence, because deep down you don't want more. You want less, but better, but more you. If you're feeling that there's something inside asking for silence, for order, for clarity, maybe it's time to listen, to look more sincerely at what you've been accumulating, and to ask yourself, does this still serve me? Have you ever noticed how there are things that stay there, even after you realize that they are no longer part of who you are? I'm not just talking about objects, but about everything that insists on taking up space even after losing its meaning. And you keep holding on to it, out of habit, out of fear, out of not knowing what it would be like without it. But at some point it starts to weigh you down, and you feel it. You feel it in the lack of lightness in the environment. You feel it in the tiredness of waking up and already feeling lost. You feel it in that strange sensation of living on autopilot, even surrounded by things that should represent you. When you think about organizing, the idea of folding clothes, storing books, cleaning drawers examples may come to mind, but what Japanese minimalism proposes goes beyond that. It's not about making things fit. It's about realizing that not everything deserves to be there. There's no point in folding well what shouldn't be taking up any space. And it is at this point that the change that really transforms begins. Have you ever wondered why you keep certain things? Why do you hold on to that object that you never use? That gift that carries an emotional weight, that paper that you swore you would need one day. The truth is that many of these items speak more about the past than about the present, but you continue to allow them to be part of your routine, even when they no longer deliver any real value. This is the first confrontation, facing what you keep and being honest with it, because most are not. It piles up excuses along with the objects. It hides the excesses behind closed doors. It postpones simple decisions as if there were plenty of time, but each object has an impact. Each thing occupies more than physical space, and maybe what's overloading you isn't visible right away. That's where the Japanese look makes a difference. It's not just about letting go. It's about looking carefully, look with intention. It's realizing what you are allowing to remain in your life. And this applies to everything, from that piece you haven't worn in years, to that obligation you fulfill on autopilot. Japanese minimalism doesn't force you to live with little. It just invites you to keep what really makes sense. Can you identify what is there today just for being there? And can you imagine what it would be like to open up space for real? Not just in the drawers, but in the time, in the thoughts, in the commitments. When you start to remove the excesses, something changes. First in the environment, then in the rhythm, then inside. But there's a trap, thinking that this is all about aesthetics, that a clean, bright house with low furniture and few objects is enough. But it's not. Aesthetics are a consequence, not the starting point. What matters is not the style of the house, it's what it represents. It's what it says about you, even when it's silent. And if today the space you inhabit doesn't calm you down, doesn't represent you, doesn't offer you peace, maybe it's time to make different choices. Have you ever felt exhausted and couldn't explain why? Have you had days when the simple act of tidying up the house seems impossible? This is not laziness, this is overload, and it is born from accumulation, from so much stuff together, from so much crossed thought, from so much obligation assumed without criteria. And then the body feels it, the mind blocks, and you start living on autopilot, trying to cope, but without knowing exactly what. When you start removing, fear comes. Fear of needing it later, fear of missing it, fear of throwing away something that has value. But it is at this moment that you need to remember, value is not what the object has, it is what it represents. And if it no longer represents anything that connects with who you are today, then there is no reason to remain. This requires presence and courage. Because opening up space is also facing what was hidden, that emotion you avoided, that decision you postponed, that choice that needs to be made. But you begin to realize that the more you let go, the more you find yourself. And this encounter, although difficult, is necessary. There are people who live waiting for an ideal moment to start. A holiday, a Monday, a quieter phase. But life doesn't stop to give you time. And while you wait for the perfect moment, you continue to carry what should have already gone. Therefore, sometimes it is better to start the way you can. A corner, an object, one less commitment. One step already changes everything. And even if it seems small, this gesture of choosing what stays and what goes is powerful. It is he who begins to restore clarity. Because when you live surrounded by excess, you lose the reference of what really matters. And without this reference, you start accepting anything. Accept invitations you don't want. Accept habits that drain you, accept ideas that are not yours. And then when you realize it, you have lost yourself. But what if you started doing things differently? What if you looked at your space and asked, does this make sense? Does this talk to who I am now, not with who I was, not with who they expect me to be, but with who you are today? Because this look changes everything. It starts to filter. It starts to push away what is not good. It starts to bring back what makes sense. And this return is silent, but transformative. Have you ever realized how many purchases you made just to fill a void? And then, even with the house full, the void continued. This happens because it's not about quantity. It never was. It's about meaning, and Japanese minimalism reminds you of that all the time. Everything that remains must have function or meaning. If it doesn't, it's taking the place of something that could really nourish you. But this doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, a daily exercise of observing, of asking, of feeling, and of acting, even when it's scary. Because in the end, you start to realize that what really matters never takes up much space. It doesn't weigh you down, it doesn't suffocate you, it doesn't mess you up. And when you feel that, it's hard to go back. You start to value the silence, the clean space, the slowed down time. You start to look at your house and feel relief. Start looking at your day and seeing choices, not obligations. Start listening to yourself more clearly and realize that you don't need so much to live well. You just need what is true. But for that, you need to stop maintaining what no longer makes sense. And that includes objects, habits, relationships, thoughts. You can't expect your life to change if you continue to be surrounded by the same things. There needs to be space for something new to arrive, and this space begins with a simple gesture, letting go. Can you imagine what would change in your life if you had the courage to let go of what no longer serves you? What if you started now, without waiting for the perfect conditions? Because sometimes, what you need most is precisely what you have been putting off, and it may be that this choice today is what will unlock a lot of things that you didn't even know were stuck. Japanese minimalism doesn't promise perfection, it promises clarity, and that's what you deserve. Because in the midst of so much excess, you forgot that the essential is simple, that lightness is in what is authentic, and that the peace you seek begins when you choose truly what deserves to be with you. There's something inside asking for pause, for space, for truth. And even if it seems small, this impulse to stay, to listen to the end, is already a kind of movement. A part of you has already understood that something needs to change. Maybe you don't know where to start. Maybe you're still trying to convince yourself that you can continue like this a little longer, but you can't. And you know that. You can continue pushing, postponing, piling up excuses. You can continue filling your days with things that no longer serve you. You can keep the environment heavy, even knowing how much it holds you back. But at some point you'll feel it. You'll feel that everything is too full. The agenda, the mind, the house, the chest. And this full doesn't fill, it just occupies, it just exhausts. And when that happens, it's not about organization or about aesthetics, it's about emotional survival. You need to stop sabotaging yourself with what you keep. It's not about having everything under control. It's not about spending hours cleaning. It's about having the courage to look at each thing and ask with sincerity, why is this still here? Why do I insist on this? Why don't I let go? And then that feeling of discomfort comes, because letting go requires presence. It requires facing the choices you've been making on autopilot. But that's where Japanese minimalism gives you a foundation. It doesn't tell you what to throw away. It shows you what can happen when you decide to keep only what sustains you. It teaches you to respect the space between one thing and another, the silence between one thought and another. It gives you back the chance to listen to yourself without noise, without excess. Do you realize what this idea of living with intention really means? It's not a distant philosophy or a passing fad. It's about going back to being the owner of your choices, about not letting objects, habits, routines, and thoughts decide for you. You've gotten used to living on autopilot, but that comes at a price. And that price has been high. It costs you time, energy, peace. And deep down, what you want is to stop feeling that everything is out of place, but nothing will fit while you continue to keep what has already lost its meaning. And that applies to more than just things. It applies to relationships that only wear you out, to commitments that only weigh you down, to ideas that only limit you. Japanese essentialism invites you to do things differently, not to have less, but to live with more intention, not to fit into a style, but to live lightly in a way that matches who you are. Do you feel you need more silence, more space, more time? Then maybe the question is no longer what you need to have, but what you need to stop maintaining. Because it's not what's missing that suffocates you, it's what's left over, what you insist on keeping out of fear, out of attachment, out of not knowing what will happen next. But lightness doesn't enter a full space. The fear of letting go will appear. It always appears. But after you go through it, comes a relief that you don't expect, a kind of peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. And that peace begins when you make a choice, just one, and then another, and one more, until what seemed impossible before starts to make sense. Have you ever noticed that the more stuff you have, the less you actually see? It's all jumbled together, piled up and confusing. But when you start to create space, things become visible. You see what was hidden. You see who you've become. You see what truly matters. You have the right to change everything, to break free from the cycle of excess, to stop pressuring yourself to maintain what should have already been let go. Japanese minimalism doesn't force you to live with little. It just reminds you that the essential never weighs you down, that living with less isn't about depriving yourself, it's about freeing yourself. And that's why it all starts when you choose what you're going to let go of. Please share this video so it can touch and help others like you and me. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being a part of our community. If you'd like to support our channel a little more, please consider becoming a channel member. I'll leave 2 more videos here so you can continue your journey. Thank you and God bless you all. See you next time.